live. Are we actually live
I
this time?
don't know about that.
Okay, it says Periscope. Okay, there it goes. There it goes.
Okay.
It's going. Okay,
Now we're
so
doing it live. Yeah,
we're
I feel the buzz in my pocket.
we're truly doing it live this time. Okay, you were saying something when I thought we were doing it live. The first
I
time.
didn't think we were live.
Oh,
So, I can't remember what it was, but how you doing this morning? I'm gonna get to it first. How you doing?
um, yeah, like you said, it's yeah, I'm living the dream. That's
No.
that's always it. The perfunctory response and the Redneck Riviera. Oh, live now. Okay.
Redneck. Yeah, I see it. I see us on tape.
Okay, so I'm gonna post this and see if I can pin these two links. So we got the today's.
Oh, by the way,
talk. Yep.
I did watch the old Mr. Was it Mr. Pocket?
Mr. Pocket. What was your thoughts on Mr. Pocket?
So are we allowed to spoil it?
Oh, okay. Are we allowed to spoil it?
Nah. I'll just say
go ahead and spoil. We're spoiling for anybody not aware. We're about to spoil the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the middle one. It's basically the high point of the endeavor. All gold canyon with Tom Waits.
Okay. Mr. Pocket.
Mr. Pocket.
See you tomorrow, Mr. Pocket.
I'm coming for you. You're old. I'm old, but you're older. Mother McCray.
So, so the point where he gets shot, I was like, that son of a gun Ford. I thought he tricked me into. He spoiled because you were talking about like that you thought that would be his own grave and stuff like that. You know, while he was mining. I was like, oh, it really is. He said it was optimistic. I had no thought that he actually might still be alive. So when he popped up and was alive, it was just this grand. Even though you talked about it being an optimistic,
right,
video or story, I was still surprised. I was really excited.
That's good. Yeah, I mean that's what happened to me because I really just did not expect it to turn out. Come on, Google, can you give me like an actual shareable link that's not like 8,500 characters long?
Come on, Google, get your act together.
Golly, what is the meaning of this? Seriously, they used to do like the little. They used to do little bit LY ones, man. Like Google did that in house.
They got rid of that. They got rid of the little short.
It takes up the whole freaking thing, so you can't even see it.
Pretend like it's a character button.
I'm literally. Okay, wait. There it is. It just barely fits. Okay, there we go. So we got two links here. Let's see if it'll come up. Yeah. Well, I'm going to pin that. No, it's not going to let me pin the tweet.
Where are you trying to pin it? Where?
On YouTube.
Dude. It's like 3 people.
No, just for future reference, because I don't want to have to people show up in chat and they manage moderators, pop out chat, toggle timestamps, participants.
For those of you that are tuning in, we welcome you. From the bottom of our heart, we salute you.
Yeah, we're here.
And we're here. We're live. We're doing live.
We are doing this live. This is the third in a long list of
tuning in. We welcome you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now we got a feedback loop. My bad. All right, I'll put this in there. I guess it's just not going to work like that. All right, I'll just put it in the doohickey.
Doobly doo?
The doobly doo. Yeah, let's do it that way. All right, here we go. So this should show up in all of the things except Facebook. If you're on Facebook, I guess go to YouTube. And there's a link in there to the slideshow that we're looking at. Link in the slideshow also to this essay I'm going to read. Okay, so we left off this whole series called the DIY, the Do-It-Yourself Time Management App, is basically trying to find an open source way to manage our time, resource, finance, and talent for a fitter, happier, more productive life.
You mentioned before that's like a quote from somewhere.
That's from Radiohead's. It's from OK Computer. I think it's fitter, happier. I think is what it's called. But I'm actually not even being ironic. I'm going to be fitter, happier, more productive. So we stopped at after Biley's recommendation of All Gold Canyon from the Battle Buster Scruggs, talking about prospecting and how it is a very procedural thing when you're dealing with real, hard, tangible, valuable goods, something like gold. But in our day and age, it's kind of hard to see what you're actually good at. It's hard. I don't know. There's just so many competing allegiances. He's out in the middle of the canyon. There's not much to look at except the beauty. But you can't really just, bottle that up. But you can pack up some gold. And I have not done a good job of finding the gold in terms of value and business or the management of the talents I have. So here we are in 2020, 11 years after this channel was created.
It's been 11 years.
Yeah. PewDiePie has 100 million subscribers, and I have just hovering at 50,000. So I definitely did not find the gold. I didn't shoot PewDiePie in the back, but and he didn't shoot me in the back. So I guess we got that going for us.
So there's that.
I'm not dead. So that's good.
That's right. I mean, people have come along and taken some of gold that you have prospected. I'd say you have been a victim of that.
Oh, yeah. I guess I have been. I mean, yeah, that's true. Not in a actual, someone shooting me with a bullet in the back. But
no, but you weren't actually prospecting either.
I wasn't. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I mean, some people have taken my ideas. I mean, there's someone who literally. So me and Noble Luke gave me the term Holly Bolly, and I was like, hey, well, yeah, we just I don't know if he even said, why don't you use your voiceover and just do like an Honest Trailer? So like, yeah, let's do it. So I started doing that, and most of those I wrote totally by myself. I had one guy, Datta Prasad Godbol, he helped writing a few of them. But then someone came in and actually took the name. I'd started doing the same, like Bollywood Honest Trailers. I think they got more subs than me using the name Holly Bolly too. So yeah, I mean, but the Wild West, like I would rather have it that way. I'd honestly rather someone just pick it off.
Well, yeah, because I was gonna say yeah,
and leave me alive than threaten legal action and. I'm gonna take it all over. It's like I'd rather you steal my intellectual property than tell me that
you're liable for your own
intellectual property. Yeah, which I have had
recently.
Yeah, recently. So I did have that. Actually, rang pretty true to me, and it was kind of more of a business tactic, a maneuvering tactic, but not one I particularly find compelling. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's the art of maneuver. I think it's more of the art of tycooner.
Well, it's definitely Machiavellian.
Machiavellian, totally.
Machiavellian.
So before we move forward, this is the 2-part series here with 5 subparts. The first one was the kind of leading up to this, trying to be to figure out a better way to be creative and more. Constructive. What is the word I'm looking for? More consistent in our creative or work life. So we spent 5 weeks on that, and now we're spending probably around 4 to 5 weeks on this DIY time management app. This whole thing has been about trying to get out of the weeds in terms of like just hitting hitting, like going in circles. And me and you as creative kind of artistic types, we seem to do that. We kind of get distracted. You know, it's like the seagulls in Finding Nemo. It's just mine, or the dogs and up, squirrel. So just constant kind of like ADD. So when I created this channel, this was over 11 years ago. That my buddy Dustin Bryson took that picture of me with the wetsuit, the violin, the surfboard, the pen pioneer, and the clapboard. And that was my whole mode of thinking was a Renaissance man for the digital age. That was like the whole idea, like that we need basically what Eric Weinstein would say later on. He would say, you know, don't be a jack of one trade and connector of none. That's what I didn't want my life to be. So for me, violin and surfing were like branding mechanisms to show this. And, you know, I did play the violin and I did surf, but I wasn't really trying to be the best at either one of them. It was just more like more of a metaphor. And of course, really the clapboard there signifying you can't really see it, but it's under my arm. The clapboard there symbolizing filmmaking.
Well, you also had a camera in your hand.
And I did have a camera in my hand. Yeah, that's correct. Hello, Mika Milkus Chermo. How are you doing?
Watch your profanity.
Greetings. But yeah, so the three, and I had a skateboard on my feet. So it was just, the idea was like the Vitruvian Man, you know, the Leonardo da Vinci thing where he's got his arms out. It's like, oh, he's doing multiple things. But I didn't want to pose naked, so I was wearing a wetsuit. So surfing, violin, filmmaking were the three primary modes of being, my modes of action. Sebastian, welcome. Hey, dude. So those three things, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, it was a great part of my life. I moved to India in 2011, and so the surfing took a back seat for 5 years of my life. It just wasn't even really a part of my life. Violin, I still did it off and on, but just typical me. I'm a perfectionist when it comes to picking up that thing, and I hate myself every time I pick it up. So I only did it when, you know, the spirit moved or it was demanded by some life event. So, you know, someone's like, oh, you play violin, you want to be in this open mic night, or you want to be in this I did a poetry reading thing. And so I played at that. So, you know, I just kind of let the wind carry me wherever. So I never really took ownership of surfing, violin. The only thing I really took ownership of was filmmaking, but basically channeled all into YouTube, which is, you know, filmmaking. It's a little stretch to call most of what I was doing filmmaking. Motion picture, but not really with a film mindset. But I did hone my skills over that time. I went over 800 videos, you know, and you do pick up some tricks of the trade from editing and stuff like that. But more than anything, I was like an editor. So now that we have a company, we're actually making, you know, commercials and videos and trying to get to the point where we can make films, and I got a better camera than I've ever had. The filmmaking part has come back into prominence. But I still cannot get out of this rut. And so I'm going to read you this because there was this great thing that started this was a little tweet that started this whole DIY life management app. We're trying to come up with something. And it's basically just, you know, it's a rubric. It's a heuristic is what it is. It's basically a word picture or a meme, something that'll be easy for you to remember that has some things built into it, almost like a video game, but just using free stuff like Google Sheets, Google Docs, and maybe some like a stopwatch or something, who knows. But it all ties in to prevent this sort of thing. My daily routine with ADHD: wake up, do effing nothing for 5 hours, panic, do stuff in a panic for 1 to 2 hours, hyperfixate on doing one thing for 4 hours, the wrong thing. I do that all the time. I did it yesterday. I got stuck on it. I got stuck in deep fakes. I was like, man, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna figure out how to do it. And actually, deep voice. It's like I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna get a text to speech. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna like be able to clone every human being's voice, just to see if it could be done. And yeah, you need like a terabyte just for the raw data. It's like, dude, can I really budget a terabyte to download all this like voice stuff for the open AI to be able to work through?
A terabyte just for the program?
No, not the program. It's just for the
data,
the
like
repository.
The
so basically what they've done is, there's people that do LibriVox. It's like Audible for free. And so anything that's in the public domain, these nice people just go and read it and they put it on LibriVox. So there's it's a ludicrous amount of human speech. And so what these voice AI can do is they can go through that entire 500 gigabytes of recorded audio and determines because it's there's no consistency in sound quality, no consistency in vocal inflection. They're all different voices, different accents. So you give an AI that much stuff to analyze. I mean, I've listened to the fruits of it, like some people doing text to speech with like Homer Simpson. Dude, it's insane. It's wild. Like deep voice might actually be more scary than deep fake.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think anybody.
Can't people already do that just with their own voice?
So I mean, but the amount of people. I went and watched Frank Caliendo. I was thinking about that yesterday and seeing how his Iron Man, his Robert Downey Jr. impersonation. It's like, it's good, but I mean,
it's not deep fake good.
It's not deep fake good. But yeah. So basically, yeah, I just did it right here in the DIY time management app. Talk about something that is out of my league. And then because of that, I get stuck in existential dread. Like, in the spin cycle here. Make pact with myself to break out of this pattern tomorrow. Repeat pattern tomorrow. So I wanted to look at what my pattern happens to be emotionally. And it's over here on the right. Spider-Man to Hulk, to Eeyore to Hulk. So this is a little excerpt from the book that I was trying to write, but I'm kind of just putting on the back burner and may make it available to some of you dudes and dudettes. But this is just a bit of it. If you can throw that one in Facebook too, I guess. So my predictable emotional spin cycle. And this is my theory about the superhero industrial complex. The majority of the worst decisions in my life can be traced back to a manic depressive cycle that has me overly energetic and optimistic for a time. I call this my Spider-Man phase, a hubris that has me swinging through life without concern for obstacles, traffic, chores, or any of the mundane realities faced by the poor normie saps below. I feel a megalomaniacal zeal for life. Everything seems to pop with color, light, and metaphorical depth. Ideas fly at me with blazing speed, and I swing from one to the next, trying to retain momentum. Idea to action, idea to action, action to idea. This idea is boring now. Let's start up a new one. No time to worry about people's feelings or the dull reality of mundane processes. When I come back down to earth to do the normal human stuff, I find that for all the supposed ground covered in manic mode, those people and processes have stacked up into an indecipherable pile of responsibilities that I am unable to accurately categorize, let alone manage. At this point, I have a minor psychological break, and depending on the timing and life circumstances, perhaps not so minor, in which I will go one of two directions, Hulk or Eeyore. The Incredible Hulk is a modern myth that is totally fictional, but a 100% accurate characterization of the God I often innately worship and willingly offer myself as a vessel for his possession and empowerment. I was not taught about this God. This is not some learned trait. This is not some puritanical hellfire and brimstone brainwashing that I can blame on the church or anyone else. This is my false God, a God who is always angry and ready to pounce on every evil, real or merely perceived through the blurred quixotic lens of mania, with reckless, mindless abandon. The Hulk is raw baby rage emotion, and just like Spider-Man, uninhibited by mundane concerns. No emotional filter, no logistical rudder, all heart, raw emotion channeled through brute flesh. The third person in my superhero complex trinity is not a superhero, but has been used as an epithet for me since I was a child. Eeyore, the beloved donkey of Winnie the Pooh lore. My wife even made reference to my tendency to slide into a no matter nihilism in our wedding vows. Generally, the pattern is manic try-hard happiness in the form of Spider-Man, as we surfers call kookdom, which hits a wall of mundane, in real life resistance, gets mopey and self-piteous when possessed by the spirit of Eeyore, lets himself get walked over and over, baiting even more negative attention with a passive martyr complex, in order to summon the manic aggression of the Hulk to atone for the sins of Spider-Man's optimism and to punish the normie world for not miraculously changing to fit Spider-Man's wish fulfillment dream. Our complex civilization requires an adept approach, but my reactionary response has been anything but adept. I have reacted to the superhero industrial complex with a psychological spin cycle complex. I have been pushed and pulled by enthusiasm, rage, and nihilism. I must learn to hold multiple states, emotional states, in thrall simultaneously rather than becoming enthralled by the rush of their current. To have a thought flow through my head and not chase it. To have an emotion flow through my being and acknowledge it and keep moving. Make a choice whether I'm going to follow my heart or not. Superheroes are one-note brand mascots of a single emotional quality conveniently packaged by demagogues and tycoons who use industrialized consumerism to manipulate the hopeless. To feel is to choose in this clown world. The will has been reduced to a matter of heart. I have been rudderless in a sea of emotional instability. It is high time for me to learn how to exercise my will independent of my feelings. But what does that look like? Do we retreat from the superhero ideal to the stoic Greek philosopher approach? Do the right thing even when it hurts like hell? Is trad resolve the solution to the soy boy consumerism wish fulfillment dream? All my life I have been a flake. I need to move from Spider-Man, the fickle enthusiast, Hulk, the frantic aggressor, and Eeyore, the fragile nihilist, to the consistent surfing, conscientious violin playing, and creative filmmaker. So we need an adept response, not a stagnant trad LARP, which just renounces emotion, because that's generally what's given to you. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like you just have to go get thee to a nunnery, you know, get thee to a monastery, sell all you have, give to the poor. There's like no other option. So if you notice, though, on the left there, my fickle, frantic fragility it's all about emotion. It's all about mood. It's not attached to will. And so you could really think of it, if this were a dialectic, you got Epicureanism that's untethered, kind of like the reductive version of Epicureanism. And then on the right, you've got these activities that require will. All three of them are choices. And that was one of the things, the pushbacks you gave me originally was like, if you reduce the whole human experience just to the things that you're doing, then you don't have room to be. Well, I think that's the problem with Stoicism, is it just says, make the choice, nothing matters. It's almost kind of nihilistic too. It's like, it doesn't matter to you what happens out there. I don't know. So, but rather, instead of thinking of the things on the right just as static, occupations or vocations or avocations, think of them as a dynamic sort of dance. And you see on the left, it's pretty much a cycle. It doesn't always go in this clockwise direction, but a lot of times it does. It's almost very programmatic. You can almost see it. Like when I get excited, something doesn't go my way, I start getting pouty, and then someone does something. And then it's like I invite more and more, like to pile on, and then eventually I just lose my temper. And this, you see this, you could almost look back at my life and just color code it, red for Spider-Man, purple for Eeyore, green for Hulk. And you could just almost color code my life and then find these like patterns. On the other side though, you notice that I put the arrows going both ways. So it's basically, this is much more of an interactive. Like you take some information from the surfing, you take some information from the violin, take some information from the filmmaking. The reason why I'm so adamant about this whole connector this Renaissance man sort of approach. The reason is because what happens when you specialize, it's what happens with like I'm not even going to mention it out loud. Just forget it. It happens when, like, kind of what we were talking about last week with the journalism thing, where the dilettante who is researching it, they get this, they try to oversimplify whatever it is that they're writing about, and so someone who's really intimately acquainted with that specific profession or area of expertise is like, they didn't just get it wrong, they got it upside down. Like, it's beyond wrong. It's anti-right. Like, it's, if you were trying to say everything, if you were trying to mischaracterize it, you would have a hard time getting it this good. Like, if you're writing fiction, you would have a hard time doing this.
Yeah.
So that's the problem that Weinstein talked about when Improbable One, he brought up that one talk where Weinstein said, Eric Weinstein, with Brett, and I can't remember if it was with, I think it was with, what's his name? Anyways, podcast.
Joe Rogan?
No, the other, Dave Rubin. So Weinstein was saying that, we're so afraid of learning more stuff outside of our field that you end up becoming a jack of one trade, connector of none. And so that's what this dance on the right is trying to push back against. So for anybody watching, it's probably not going to be surfing, violin playing, and filmmaking. Who knows what it is? Maybe it's free running and writing and making chai. I don't know. But they're different things that don't necessarily seem to go together. And also, the way I wrote it over here on the right is a good reminder for me, because to move from fickle, frantic fragility to consistent surfing. So it's like, I live in a place where the surf is inconsistent. So when the surf's up, like we actually had waves this week, it throws off your entire schedule. So it is kind of this like weird, like it's like playing poker. There's a lot of luck involved. There are times where you go dry for a long time, and then all of a sudden you get on a run where everything seems to be falling into place. But the problem with that is, if you haven't prepared, like an ant preparing before the winter, you end up, it all happens at once. You need to do your work while the surf's done. And, if you weren't prepared ahead of time, then you really can't do it. So consistent, meaning that I prepare when the surf is not up. Like, I'm staying in shape by swimming or running, boxing, something. And to push back against that tendency, because surfers can be very fickle people. We can be there's something about it. The way I worded it when I was trying to write the book was, there's something so alluring about the rush of surfing that once you come back to land, all you can think about is getting back out. It's like kind of like an addiction. And normal life just feels so mundane. And you're just like, ugh, it's that Spider-Man thing. You're like, oh, I just want to be flying, man. I don't want to be down here dealing with paperwork. So you have to live a consistent life in order to maximize the use of surfing. And then conscientious violin playing. Violin players can tend to be really cocky and stuck up because it is a very technical instrument, and can kind of look like, I'm at the front of the orchestra. But as a second violinist, I learned that a lot of second violin stuff is almost just like a percussion section. It's or like a rhythm guitar. A lot of harmony, a lot of support. And so it does. I need to get back in that mindset rather than trying to be the virtuoso.
Trying to be the carry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, try to be the support. Probably try to be the support violinist, and that will fit much better into my, like the crazy idea I had about doing the big orchestra thing, the Surfing Violinist Symphony. That'll be much easier if I'm conscientiously practicing. So this week I was really getting the best practice I've done in probably years, and then the surf got up, and then I didn't practice at all. So it's like trying to balance those things in such a way that you're disciplined enough, even though you're tired from surfing, that you're actually going to still do your scales. And that's hard to get in the mindset of doing, because you're just you're tired. You're like, I just want to veg out, I just want to consume. But in order to move from this consumption factory that we're living in to being more creative and constructive, you gotta make those. That's where that stoicism kind of comes in. It's time to do my scales.
Yeah.
Hard to do. And then filmmaking, of course, that's where I can be creative. And I think too much of the time, like we've said, like if we were playing League of Legends, we're trying to be creative. It's like, nah, man. I mean, or Dota. Like you can't be creative with that when you're a beginner. You just got to do the work. You just gotta focus on the fundamentals.
Do your scales. Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to do your scales. And so I need to do my scales in surfing. I need to do my scales in violin and filmmaking. I need to start. I actually need to do my scales in filmmaking too when it comes to color correction and everything. So do the hard work so that you can be creative, but really channel it through the film, because I've been, basically in one of these books I was reading, they're saying, Ebert, he said it. It was an intro to one of these books where they interview all these directors. And he's saying, there is no real guild. They call them guilds, but there is no real guild to bestow the title of director on you. You basically just have to declare it to the world, and then all of a sudden you have to prove it. So there's no, you can go to school and get your, filmmaking degree. The proof is in the pudding. It's just, can you make a film? Can you make a film that people actually want to watch? So you say, I'm a director, and you basically, it's, you have to go out and prove it. So declare it and then do it. But there is no hypothetical about it. You can't wait for someone to come do it for you. So one other thought here. On the left, from stagnant internal conflict, the psychological complex, to transformative perichoretic dance. That's a word that popped up in my head that you told me about when we were talking about the Trinity as exit from dialectical stagnation. Mm-hmm. So what we're talking about here is an active avocational Trinity as exit from psychological complex. And it's more like a dance, where you're saying that's a theological term that I never even heard of, the Christian idea of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and that there's this dance that defies human understanding because it's beyond, it's essential in a way that like three humans couldn't be. So in a way, a human can kind of approximate that, like with three different actions, that you have to think totally differently. A surfer is not the same as a violinist, is not the same as a filmmaker, but they can inform each other. Three persons, one essence. So to move from that stagnant conflict that's just basically this dynamo of mental malaise, an emotional malaise that makes life miserable for everyone around you, because none of these three characters are good to be around when they're in human form. Like Spider-Man's annoying because he's just talking too much. And I see my wife's eyes glaze over sometimes when I'm getting really excited about some topic she's not really interested in. And then over time, then that wears me down because I'm like, oh, she doesn't like it. And so then I'm Eeyore, which sets me up for being mad about something. And, and trying to scapegoat the world. I turn into Don Quixote, and I'm looking for someone to blame. And so it's...
Yeah. Well, and then it's the Hulk trying to carry everything to success, right?
Yeah, just force it. Total force.
Atlas, just carry the world. I'll do it. I'll make it happen.
Right. Yeah, and I think of Samson too, like the biblical story of Samson. Like when he carries the world, he basically pulls it down. So it's not that sort of brute flesh, that brute rage is only good for destruction. It's now, is there a time for destruction? Yeah, there is. I just don't think we're in the age where destruction will have the effect that Samson's destruction had in that scenario. Like it doesn't eradicate the problem. And actually Samson's destruction there didn't eradicate the problem either. The problem
it did not.
It was too deep. It was a sociocultural conflict which is what so many of what we're dealing with. And rage cannot hit the target, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So one of your questions, I predict, will be like, well, what is this actually going to look like? Like, how do you actually get to this point? And that's what we're trying to figure out. So what does this look like for me? So yesterday, I mean, this is early forms of this. Yesterday, I started writing this down. And it's, I've got the podcast right in the middle.
Okay.
And the podcast is something that, as long as I can, I want to keep it totally unmonetizable unless I have like a Jamie. And in that case, me and Jamie would both take a wage. But up until that point, I want this to be a safe space. I want it to be a conversation place at the very most, you know, if it ever gets anywhere, like marketing for the other stuff that I do. As opposed to the reverse, which would be to make this podcast like the cash cow. So, and then the podcast basically using this almost like Jordan B. Peterson's lecture series and stuff like that as a time, but hopefully more interactive as time goes on, where ideas can be tested out, and then that can inform the books that I hope to write. And again, that's a long way out from really happening. But to get it more succinct so that people don't have to wade through all this pseudo-intellectual gobbledygook and going through the weeds. You know, trying to figure out here basically like my maps of meaning, you know, the very long, his was actually scholarly, but mine's more like pseudo scholarly, you know, upper middle brow or whatever, lower middle brow. But really try to get it all out so that when we can edit it and give it, you know, help people maybe not spend as much time in this phase. But then what I've done is I've circled some of the things that I actually really want to do, and I've already changed this. But 1 week and 1 minute, something I'm already doing. That's something that's holding me accountable to just the bare minimum of being more sociable. You know, like reaching back out to not just viewers, but you know, friends and family. Yeah, and it's been kind of fun. Let's had a friend over this week who also spent some time in India, and they cooked chole bhature, which is chickpeas and like a oily bread, which is man, they did a great job. It's the best. It might be the best Indian food I think she's ever cooked. Now, of course, we are very far removed from India at this point, so almost anything tastes good. But no, it tastes legit. All three of us were like, I think this is pretty real. Hey there, user. Oh man, that's.
What's up?
I can't actually tell what that is. Is that Devanagari numbers or is that just a balloon? So it looks kind of like this. 1 week and 1 minute. You know, like just having friends in there saying keep in touch. It's kind of nice, getting me a little out of my shell, maybe re-socializing me a little bit out of my Hulk nature. And then I've got a couple others in there, Bollywood and Beyond, which based Bollywood's kind of on the back burner, but be working on it again, and I'm going to rebrand it as Bollywood and Beyond and actually film it and make it more approachable and try to spread the gospel of Bollywood song and dance. There's just, I mean, I honestly could do that series for 5 years once a month. And I think I wouldn't get tired of it. So I want to build up a library of those rather than just flying by the seat of my pants, which I've always done on this channel, just flying by the seat of your pants. So, and the Surfing Violinist Symphony Orchestra is another one I've circled there. That's to get me to do second violin again and be consistent with it. So, a little bit further down, I am going to see about doing the Patreon thing on this YouTube channel. I'm not sure when that'll happen. Maybe in April, maybe in May. We'll see. I've already discontinued Patreon. I'll still keep posting the stuff to the people who were supporting. I don't think anybody's been looking at it in months, but I'll just keep posting it just in case. But we'll basically do the same thing on YouTube and just kind of consolidate all their efforts here, and with a goal towards These are the defining. I added one more: consistency, curation, because that's something that I've done. That's what Bollywood and Beyond would be about. There's another one I'm thinking about doing called YouTube Talent Scout, which is basically shining a light on YouTube channels that are either underrepresented or have impacted me greatly and have disappeared and need to get their asses back on YouTube and save this platform from, just this corporate malinvestment is what I'm calling it. It's pervasive. You can't find anything good. It's just all, the cream has not risen to the top. So there's just some really good chunks of material, some gold to be dug, and definitely would. I would like that one to be a little more informal than Bollywood and Beyond, and be more of a weekly thing. And I think it would be cathartic for me because there are hundreds of channels, and again, this is one I could do for years. So consistency, curation, kismet. That's that. Looking for the happy side of fate. For the pocket aces you get dealt. That wave that comes out of nowhere, just being ready for the good stuff. So when we choose to be stoically consistent, we got to openness. The Improbable One shared with me one of JBP's talks is in his lecture series. I think he's going through Maps of Meaning, his book, and he's talking about trait openness and the big five, and we had a discussion, me and Improbable One, about how the problem with being open is that you can share too much information, scare people off, and JBP talks about that, like how in a time of scarcity or austerity or danger, impending doom, an open person who is creative and vibrant and maybe even charismatic is like they got a bullseye on their forehead. And I don't think it's without cause that every week we have a new end of the world crisis. And it literally is like 1984 at this point. Like, we forget what happened last week. And seriously, if you just go back and look at the things we were freaking out about 5 years ago, you're like, what was that again? Like Y2K. What was that again? It's like, now it was actually a problem, but
Y2K was a problem?
It was. No, it actually was. But it got solved by people in tech. And some of the expectations weren't entirely correct. But it wasn't that nothing was going to happen, but that the hysteria over it was disproportionate. And someone figured it out.
Yeah.
And so this constant Chicken Little for the better part of 100 years, since the printing press was turned towards currency, and if it bleeds, it leads. Now we got coronavirus, and I've got a lot of trustworthy people that are just like, that's all they're talking about right now. And I'm like, okay. I had people telling me in India, like, you got to be walking around wearing a mask because of the pollution rates are so high. You got to have an air purifier. I've lived there 5 years. This New York Times correspondent wrote this. I did this rant. I went on a Ford rant against this guy. This New York Times correspondent in Delhi, like, he wrote this just, oh, golly, it was so bad, dude. It's so bad. I don't understand how these people get paid. It was this purple prose stream of, no, he's trying to be literary. It's just so purple, so like self-important, like ranting about India's pollution, and his kid had asthma, and his kid got asthma because of India, because no kids in America have ever had asthma, and so it's of course India's fault. And India's pollution is bad. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But my son was born there, and he was talking about, going to the hospital and how, the roads are so bad. It's like, dude, I drove in India. And he's talking about his driving, and how, we were rushing to the hospital. And he acted like it was like, his kid had coronavirus, asthma. And so
asthma.
He just like blew everything out of proportion. But that sort of hysteria just characterizes everything the past 100 years, where, and we reward these people for being hysterical. It's like, the only bit of news apparently that we need to hear is that you're going to die. Now, it doesn't mean you be flippant about it again, but like, you know, when the Black Plague came out, when the Red Death, that's Edgar Allan Poe, Black Death, so many of these pestilences come out. People with resilient immune systems were right there in the middle of it with no vaccine. Human beings are insanely resilient. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you're frail and feeble, no, you don't want to go run into the middle of a coronavirus epidemic. But if you're strong, you kind of want to.
Well, we need nurses. We need doctors. We need people helping.
And also, we need immunity. Yeah. So the more of us that get immune to the thing, the less spread it's going to have. Like,
absolutely. Well, I think it's something. I did a podcast actually with my brother on this about our society's like allergic reaction to death. How like we just shun anything death. Like nobody's allowed to die. We're not allowed to even talk about death. You know, so if the coronavirus takes 11 people, that's like, no, gotta lose my mind. I don't care if they were like old and probably going to die soon anyways. We're so afraid of death, especially in America.
Well, you know, and the thing that's crazy to me is the amount of things that kill people that no one talks about. So in India, old people die of exposure all the time. Heat exhaustion, freezing to death, all the time because they're frail and malnourished. No, I'm not saying like all of India's like that, but there was just like a homeless old dude in Delhi in the winter. His blanket's not thick enough, and he dies. That happens all the time. People die. I mean, in America, people die of ladder falls every year. At least 200 dudes or something like that a year. No one talks about that. No one's out going, petition on the streets to ban ladders. People drown every year, disproportionate to the level of concern. They're just so, and then the gigantic things that kill people, heart disease, a lot of these things dictated by diet. Don't want to talk about that because that's offensive. And then you got things like drug addiction and overdosing. I mean, that's the opioid crisis is not a hysteria. That is real. Like people dying of prescription drugs at a disproportionate rate, killing way more people than guns or viruses or bacteria or mold. I mean, it just came out of an industry. It was like, mold. It's always, so it's all, I don't think it's without reason.
Well, my brother's, what he prescribed is that, and this, this sort of, I felt a little bad about not doing this. Is he was saying we need to spend more time with people that are sick and dying, and we need to look face in the death more often.
Absolutely.
Because we cordon ourselves off from death and sickness. Like so as soon as Americans start getting a whiff of it's all compartmentalized.
Yep.
It's totally not integrated into our daily lives. He was saying so my brother wrote a short story about a guy who went around. He was a pet murderer, but it brought the light to how much, like even in our pets, we don't we don't take care of animals in a way that we see death on a regular basis. Like farm people,
right? And we put it out of sight, out of mind. So it's like my wife and my daughter and my mom just blithely look past the fact that the cute little kitty outside is just murdering things like en masse outside and like playing with its prey, not to eat them, like just for sport, just playing with the lizard, rips its head off. Look how cute. It's like that's just, this is the world that we've inhabited. This is real. Hey, Carm, it's good to see you in the chat.
Carm comes back.
Didn't see you last week, so I was worried that I scared you away forever with my Bernie rant. I will actually give condolences about Biden beating Bernie. I'm no Bernie fan. I'm no fan of socialism, but I honestly would have been much more interested in Bernie getting it than Biden, and just we'll see what happens. I mean, we're in crazy town. Let's just see what happens.
Digress.
Well, let's just see what happens, baby. I mean, Trump is crazy, and I'm sorry, I do feel Bernie's a little crazy, but Trump's crazy. I admit that openly. So it's like two crazy dudes like go against. That would have been for an interesting. I think it would have brought up some interesting conversations, if nothing else. Tulsi hasn't dropped out of the race, by the way.
I don't think they're going to let her debate, which sucks.
Like man, I don't know. I'm like on this razor's edge where I would almost be willing to say, all right.
All in for Tulsi?
Yeah. I will go on the I'm not there. I'm not going on the record, but I'm on the verge of being willing, like if enough people were to do it, like I'd vote for Tulsi over just to shake things up against Trump. Because to me, like it's hilarious to me that everything that the Democrats have said has just proven totally inconsequential. You have a woman of color who's for peace,
and they want to stifle her.
They stifle her, and they paint her with all the misogynist tropes that they play. I'm like, I can't tell you the number of tweets I've read that I'm like, what? This white woman just said this to Tulsi?
Yeah.
It's like ethnocentric and insinuating that she's a slut. Like, okay. I don't even know it's up and down anymore at this point.
But we digress.
I said last week, Carm, I said I wouldn't talk about politics anymore, but I just did. So anyways, if it bleeds, it leads. Yes, you're correct. I think that we're in large part to blame for this. Prem asks, why are you not getting subscribers? A lot of times I've blamed the caliber of the audience that would fall for things that I think are stupid, while just like turning a blind eye to me. But really, at a certain point, this is where the Stoics are right. This is where JBP is right. This is where people, some of these self-help people are right. You just can't take responsibility. You can't defer responsibility when the common denominator is you failing. You can't just blame reality. At a certain point, you just got to be like, all right, I got to do something different. Just own it. Like, just own it. And so that's one of JBP's refrains. He keeps referring to Alexander Solzhenitsyn and talking about I was benefited by this culture that is now persecuting me, and so I'm at fault for it. Like, I'm to blame. And if you can do that, that actually gives you a course of action. Again, we're trying to find a third path here that we're not going full on this, pseudo martyr complex stoic thing. Like, we're trying to find a dynamic dance through this that's saying there might be another way through this that we haven't quite seen yet.
Well, and we're going through the weeds in the sense that we are taking our time building a foundation, creeping up a hill of exploration. Right?
And so, like that one idea, I think tomorrow I'll take some time, go back and look at Base Bollywood, the ones that I've done, and this YouTube Talent Scout idea. Because I think both of those, they actually are things that I consume that energize me. Good YouTube channels, good Bollywood song and dance numbers. They actually they give me just give me a hope to create something myself. And I think that is the best antidote to the if it bleeds, it leads mentality, which is it's pure disaster consumerism. Don't even call it capitalism. It's disaster consumerism. It's lit because it's about disposability. If coronavirus, they get a vaccine or, they find some way or someone gets immune and then, then they've got 5 other stories in waiting. They got 5 other. The things that we forget about is that it would be great to do a study eventually. It'd be great to do a study to see the ones that didn't catch on. The hysterias that no one paid attention to. The clickbait, if it bleeds, it leads, but it didn't lead anywhere. And then go check those people, those reporters 6 months later to find out they never, they're joking about that thing that they were hysterical about 6 months before.
Yeah.
Like all these it's almost like the stock market, but instead of money, I mean they do make money off this stuff. It's like the stock market, but instead of money, it's hysteria. It's like,
Well, it's attention.
yeah.
It's similar to it's similar to how people like kids act, right? Like in a big group, it's like, "Oh, got crazy law. I'm so scared, man. Look at me, cry, cry, cry." You know, like it's attention. It's attention getting, and attention that pays.
Oh yeah.
You know, like come on.
There are times. Yeah, there are times it just looks like. Sometimes on Twitter, it just it goes like elementary school level fighting. You're like, I don't know, unless it's just LARPing, and then that's yes, it's funny. Pet murderer. There's a T-shirt idea. Dude, that would be to make that a short film. That would be a bleeding leader right there.
I'll share my brother's short story with you. It's pretty interesting.
Cool. Check it out. Cycling guitarist. There used to be a huge part of culture dedicated to death in ancient India. Most of it has been forgotten, however, with just a few rituals surviving. Yes. In fact, when I was there, what are those sadhus called? The ones in Varanasi that have the skulls and paint themselves in ash. They one of the comic book guys. He made a series of comics. I loved them. I thought they were actually really good. It was real, like Dante's Inferno-esque. This guy goes down into hell, and I don't know. I thought it was really good. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, that they did someone did a trailer for the comic book, and they did like music. It was like a dubstep-y sort of thing, but real like rooted in traditional. And they had a gory. That's it. Yes, that's it. Thanks, guys. And they had a guy doing these like kind of, I mean, very almost like yoga master sort of like breathing exercise and stuff. You see his ribs and that was, even though it's, you know, it's kind of mainstream, dumbed down, not really getting at the heart of the issue. It helped me understand better, because you typically a Western will come in and just be like, this is disgusting, this is demonic. And it's just the typical, you know, Christian Westerner sort of like not understanding. And it's the same thing that happens over here with a movie like Hellraiser. Like Hellraiser and The Exorcist, I think are great, actually. Like I think they're great. Like if you want to think about what your worst part of your nature, how it is this very fine filament between heaven and hell, and how you can take even a heavenly thing and turn it into pure malevolence, and pure malevolence can then be a like revitalizing thing to you. Like that line that between good and evil is very thin, and it's important to meditate on that. And that's, I think, what a lot of modern psychoanalysis is. But a lot of Christians just throw that out because they're like, oh, this is glamorizing violence. It's like, well, by that token, then Dante's Inferno is glamorizing violence. By that token, the Book of Judges in the Bible is glamorizing violence. I keep saying that over and over. There's only Quentin Tarantino, Cronenberg could direct the Book of Judges. Like, you know, maybe a handful of others. Anurag Kashyap could direct the Book of Judges. Like, I'm serious. Go read that. It is insane. It's Game of Thrones. It's wacky. Some weird shit in that book. So yeah, this whole sort of idea that that not thinking about death, like kind of like what we're talking about just a second ago. The irony is we don't want to think about death, but it's always if it bleeds, it leads. But there is a positive form of meditation on death that is good. In the Catholicism, in their tradition, they have something called the memento mori. It's like a reminder of death. And and that stuff is like, it's transcendent, man. It goes across cultures, and that's why, like in Mexico and Latin America, like that Santa Muerte, it almost looks like the Virgin Mary, but she's a skeleton. There's something about like this reminder. This is where you're going to be. So start thinking. Karim said Weinstein with Jocko talked about this, seeing the faces of death, how Vietnam was far more perceived as destructive to life than Iraq. Interesting. Yeah, Weinstein and Jocko, that would be a good talk. Huh. Cool.
What?
Weinstein talking with Jocko about Vietnam and how it was perceived and how perception can actually make things worse than they are. You know, Jocko, I can't remember. I think Jocko, the Daniel Bellelli, and Martyr made Daryl Cooper. The three of them had this conversation about violence and death, and fantastic. Like, that's one of the better podcasts I could recommend. That in conjunction with Daryl Cooper, Martyr Made podcast, his one on the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. One of the most horrendous things you'll ever hear. And it's like anti-war within reason. And it's anti-unnecessary death is what it is. And what happened in that place is just so horrific. But the problem is those kind of tragedies were shared, you know, the Western mistakes. The other kinds of tragedies were not shared. That's the things that the opposition were doing, which weren't good. Like, people just turn a blind eye, like, oh, they're for the common people. Yeah, and that's why Stalin killed over 50 million people. Yeah, it's really, really good. My take on death is that life equals death. Oh, that's pretty good, user. Can you tell me what those numbers are? I can't remember. Is that ik, do, teen, char, punch, che, sot, odd. No. I think it's ik, do, teen. I got to figure it out.
Those look like balloons. What are you talking about?
Numbers. I'm going to figure it out before they tell me. Figure it out.
Eyes crying, maybe.
It's one. It's got to be one, right? User 11. User Gyara. My take on...
you were right, he says.
My take on death is that life equals death. I agree. Yeah, I think that's... Yeah. You got to die to live. Got to live to die. Both of those work. Living to die. Dying to live. That's surfing by a lot of Steve 2.0. Living to die. Dying to live. Rebrand, like I got a mullet and it's like a Chuck Norris like style Walker Texas Ranger with a cheesy like metal. What do you think? Oh, Cycling Guitarist. I did listen to that song you mentioned last week. Here, I'll throw this one of that album you mentioned. This one was my favorite. It was what was it called? Hold on, let me.
Just FYI, it's 9:12. I don't know if you've got
crap. Yeah, I'm gonna have to leave real soon. What was the name of that band again? It's not Circadian Rhythm. What was it? But yeah, I was listening to it. I was checking the surf, and this one piece in particular really captured my symphonic imagination. And I was gonna try to cover it, but then I got 8 other things I'm trying to cover. If the nature has the power to destroy you, it also provided enough in you to strive through. The balance is always maintained. Oh, I like that, user 11. That's I was thinking about that because surfing this week, the east side of our pier started coming on again. Mitochondrial Sun soundtrack album. Okay. So what is that from?
What is what from?
Mitochondrial soundtrack album. Is it a soundtrack of something in particular? Okay, the one that I liked was Braying Cells. That was my favorite one. I'm not gonna play it because they'll get mad at me, but here, I'll share it in the chat. So I was paddling out. It's not even big, man. It's like this is tiny, like 3 to 5 foot, here, and a wave broke on me and threw me off my board. It was just shallow enough that when I guess I just underestimated it, pinned me to the bottom. I was like, I was not expecting this from this little wave. And I just got to thinking about the impact zone. That's what we call that. It's on the way to the lineup. And a lot of times a surfer who doesn't know what they're doing will just luck out. It's just kind of like being, beginner's luck, like playing poker and you just get a good hand dealt with. Sometimes surfers will just make it to the outside not realizing what they missed. And then they take off on a wave not knowing that a set wave's coming behind. And sets are typically, waves will come, when the big waves come, they come anywhere between 3 and, depending on where you're at, 10. If it's a big storm swell, a place like Hawaii, 10. So you take off on the first wave before the set. Oh, it's fun. You turn around. You're too far out to paddle in, and you're too far in to paddle out. I'm telling you, that feeling, oof, when you just see the horizon, there's no escape. So the impact zone. But the thing is, in order to harness, JBP even talked about that, like in order to harness the will of nature, if you are not simpatico, it's going to bowl you over and it's going to come at you like Medusa, and you're going to see it in its horror. And if you're a surfer, you have to take it on the head and pray you survive. And when you see what people survive, it's just stupid, man. I don't even understand it. I truly just don't get it. I felt what, an 8-foot wave feels like. I cannot imagine what a 30-foot wave feels like with that much water. It's like a waterfall in your head. Man, it's just insane. But yeah, it's the same energy that that powers you to feel like you're flying is the same energy. You need that kind of destructive power that will hurt you otherwise. So, solo project, one of your favorite artists. Cool. Yeah. So I really liked that one a lot too. The Braying Cells one. It was like, it's right up my alley. That's really kind of one of the type, not that music in particular, but that idea of coming up with the soundtrack, like a concept, tying it to something and using the Surfing Violinist Orchestra to perform it. And then we'd sell that, release it to the fans and stuff. So So anyways, back to our thing. We'll leave off there for our DIY life management app. Mine looks something like this. It's going to be a bullseye, and you can't really tell. You can't really tell, but basically, I'm going to have little gateways. It's going to be like a maze. I'm going to say, this one, I do my 1 week and 1 minute, and then I do YouTube Talent Scout. Then I do Bollywood and Beyond. Then I do Surfing Violin Symphony. Or, just find a rhythm that will actually work. Remembering that in this new dance that we're trying to come up with, it goes both ways. So I might be in the surfing mode, and then it's time to jump right into filmmaking. I might be filming surfing. I might be filming violin. I might be playing violin. I might be writing violin. I might be writing a short story about surfing. So all these things kind of tying together and informing one another. And so I think that's why it's important for me to have some heuristic that's not just, it needs to be kind of like a flow chart, like we said before, where it can 3D. It's like, with junctures where you can jump from one thing to the other. Improvisational hypercube, that kind of thing.
Quick question. What does trad mean and what does LARP mean?
Traditional. So on Twitter, like the world I'm in now on Twitter, you get a lot of reactionary response, and it's hard to tell what is earnest and what is just trolling. But one of the reactionary responses to the sins of the modern world, it just sounds like the Christian Coalition from the 1970s and 80s. It's like, become a Catholic. Well, the Christian Coalition wasn't doing that, but, become a Catholic, become a Orthodox, and stop doing this, stop doing that. Don't smoke, don't chew, don't drink, and don't hang with those who do. I mean, it's just like the same sort of thing, but it's like kind of like pseudo ironic. I don't know, but it's like a LARP. It's like they're not really actually doing it. And
Okay, so what's a LARP?
Live action role play.
Oh, right.
And I
Okay.
would say that so much of what we've been conned into to spending our time being concerned about, whether it be religion or fandoms or politics, sports, so much of it is
LARPing.
well, I mean, we're LARPing, but also I think even the industry is a LARP. I think the industry is not. It's kayfabe, so much of it, where it's like, match fixing and all this stuff. It's like it, the percentage of it that is way higher than you would be willing to admit. So don't get caught up in this as much as you can. Like don't give your bandwidth away for free. Which and so going back to that question earlier, like why aren't more people here? At this point, I don't really want more people to be here because I think they'd probably be
Wanting quality.
well, yeah, they'd want quality. That, but also they'd push it towards a consumer like commodity, and so I do. One of the things I think in that JBP lecture, I think that you and I and other creative people need to remember is that we tend to take a shit on things that make money, and we don't want to sell out.
Yeah.
The problem with that is, though, the things we like make money. I like the Coens. They made money. I'm glad that Friedrich Nietzsche released Beyond Good and Evil as a capital product. He published it with his own money, didn't even recoup that money. It took it 100 years to get to me, but by the time it got to me, it made a difference in my life. And he did that. It made a difference because he made it as a commercial good, as a capital good. So I think there is this temptation just to, because of all the bad examples we see, we make this part for the whole dismissal. Even though, and the weird thing is we still keep doing it though. We're all consuming at a rate that hitherto unknown in the history of the universe. We're consuming nonstop. So make products not just for consumption, but for catharsis. Like that's what I want to make. And if you can, and if selling it is the only way to get it in front of people, then sell it. Don't feel bad that you're making money from it. I think that there's this sort of like thing that we're afraid of selling out, but we're all buying stuff that's less than the thing that we would make if we had the chance to do it. Because the best pieces of art that I've ever seen. Lucas Pax is now following. Thank you for the follow there, Lucas. Appreciate it. I think the best pieces of art, music, film, the video games that we've played, we wouldn't think of them as consumption. Those things have like changed our lot, rewired our brains. And like even if I never play Final Fantasy VI again, and I'd think for now, like for this time period, would feel like it's a consumer waste of time to replay that game because all the grinding and stuff. Like at the time, I do not think it was just a distraction. I really don't. And if you ask most kids today that play Minecraft or Roblox or whatever, the lion's share of the time that they spend is consumption. However, I'm not convinced that you can throw the baby out with the bathwater there.
No, I mean everything we do. I was thinking about fantasy football in the same way. Like there are things we want to attribute. Like people will say, painting a picture is as much, spend your time painting a picture. At least you'll be creative. Like all this stuff is it's just medium, right? It's just ways for us to work out our thoughts, our problem solve. Like you said, real life is a video game, and so when we play these other little games, it's just ways to conceptualize our more real problems. But we can't always engage in real life problems. That's just impossible. You talked about it before. Like sometimes we need to get away, play a little golf, do a little boxing. You got to play a little video game. Like we have to get out of real life in order to think of different ways to approach problems.
Yeah, and I think the reason I've once again taken a break from League, and I would like to spend that time, if I do anything video game related, just making my own.
Yeah.
To the extent that I can. And maybe it's very simple, but I've been watching so much Homestar Runner with my son. Like he loves the Strong Bad emails,
Nice.
and so we just keep watching them and just seeing how they create with such simplicity, such fun little characters and great social commentary and comedy, and it just gets past everyone's like alarm bells. Like they're just like they've been uncancelable. They just sat there, and if you go back, you can find all sorts of manner of things that are quote unquote problematic, probably, but nobody really cares because they just never put themselves into the mainstream. They just they had their website, and they're just there. It's just funny. I went back and watched one where all the comments like totally missed it. Like they didn't even get what it was about. It was very clearly like it wasn't just like a parody of PBS. It was a straight up like double barrel shotgun to PBS. It was good. It was just
Really?
yeah. So yeah, I think to be able to do it that way, to be able to tell your story, to convey your message in a way that even if it's like a double barrel shotgun of promise. He pulls both triggers, and even PBS would be like, yeah, you kind of got us. That's pretty good. It's not like it's not a declaration of war, And I think if we can have that sort of creativity, that'd be good.
I think we need to get out of the woods, though. Like speaking of getting or not losing viewers, we need to get out of the weeds and I don't know, start discussing practical, like topical stuff rather than the weeds.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's just this whole thing has been, I think, kind of a spin cycle post hurricane. 3 different jobs, and then starting a new company and moving into a place that it's not done. So until that place is done, it's still going to be kind of a little bit of the weeds here. But gotcha. As we move into, my plan is we're still calling this Surviving this podcast in alpha. So we'll move into beta, which will be what you were saying, kind of a recap of everything we've covered. And my goal will be to take moments from the podcast that are actually hold up, or that maybe said something interesting, or maybe something I want to correct or refine, and just kind of compress that into a hopefully expedited middle season, like a transitional season, the podcast in beta. And then we can actually move to 1.0, which we can just, the number will start at 1 finally. We're still in 0 point. So beta will keep the same numbering system, and then we'll get to 1. Hopefully it doesn't take us to 99 to get to 1. So we'll shoot for at least, we're at 46 now. Hopefully by episode 60 we'll be there. But maybe sooner. Maybe in April or May. That'll be almost the year anniversary of the podcast. So
boom.
We're getting there, getting pretty close.
Yeah.
Karam says, sometimes gatekeeping on what is selling out and what is of taste is more about our internal fox with the grapes are sour anyways. Oh, shit.
What is, I don't know what that means. Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. Do I call you dude or dudette, Karam? I don't know.
Yeah, you referred to him as a guy before. I think is it a guy?
I don't know. So let me know. So I don't.
I just want to say I think it makes me glad that Karam's back. You were so.
I felt real bad last week. Actually, I felt real bad the week before that. I was like,
you're looking
I was looking for Karam online. Like, I'm sorry. And then the next day, I lost my shit with the Starbucks employee. Like, just read the riot act. I was streaming live to Starbucks on Twitter. Oh man, I just totally lost my shit. This poor barista. I got to go back and apologize to this poor guy. It wasn't his fault. I mean, it wasn't his fault. It totally wasn't his fault. It was this stupid corporation, like every single one to get the timing wrong on when it opens up. Third or fourth person, like, be turned away at the door. Anyways, no. So what Karam's talking about there, I've been guilty of this. So
Explain it to me.
Lindsey Sterling flew past me on YouTube, started after me, and flew past me. And, I had a buddy, one of my best friends, say, hey, have you seen this? And she hooked up with Devin Supertramp. Not hooked up, but like hooked up creatively with Devin Supertramp, who had the... I'm almost ready.
Okay.
And he had this Steadicam rig, and he would follow her around, traipsing, not on location sound at all, which that drives me nuts. So, and then, it's just like, oh, it's violin dubstep. And I'm like, hey, that ain't dubstep. That's like muted trap at best. It's like, what?
Anyways, what was the point of the grapes? You gotta go.
So anyways, I had sour grapes about her because she was successful and I wasn't. And so, well, she's a girl, she's cute.
The grapes are sour anyways.
And so so much of what we blame in the culture for making it is really just envy. And so, I was saying, like, we're just as guilty about that as anybody. Like, oh, they made it. And so but then the problem is it debilitates you because you're afraid to put it out because someone's going to say about you what you said about them. It's going to happen. And I'll tell you it will happen. And man, the problem is sometimes the comments are right. They're just too right. You're like, oh man, that hurts, dude. And so, Lindsey had to deal with that shit. I mean, how many second violinists in regional orchestras just, doing the practice, doing the rehearsals, doing these really incredibly difficult passages, and then turn on and there's this girl that just rockets past them. Like, doesn't even need an orchestra. Like, and she's making millions of dollars. Like, sour grapes. Like, I think we got to get that out of our head in order to be creative. Like, tossing stones at other people trying to make it ain't gonna help you. So, all right, I better go. Got to bring my daughter first day of work. So, all right, thanks everyone. Godspeed. Thanks to have you back there, Carm.
From the bottom of our heart, we salute you, Carm.
Yes, from the bottom.
And everybody in the chat, everybody who's watching.
From the bottom of our hearts, we salute you. Reference to MacGyver. Thank you all for stopping in. We'll see you next week, and we'll hopefully get a little more actionable heuristic from this very messy notebook paper here. All right, we'll see you next time. Godspeed.
Bye.